Right, Tom's face may be a bit blurry, but it's working. Hello. Oh, we haven't even not got like things. Right. This is.
Oh, we're good. Wow, my hair sticks up in weird places today.
My hair has gone crazy. Right. Hello, everybody. Is it working? Can the internet hear us?
It's working.
It is working. Good.
I guess.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Flight Sim Weekly. I feel like I've broken this already.
I also kind of spoke over you at the start, so I think you should do that again.
We'll get there. We'll get there one day. We'll do a perfect intro.
I'll shut up now.
And it will be perfect. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Flight Sim Weekly. I almost forgot what we were doing there. Got a very blurry Tom on the webcam stream, but let's just say we've had a few technical issues in the studio. My name's Agent Squash. On my right-hand side, of course, as usual, it's the one, the only, Jess Ripley. And joining us today, we have a very special guest. But we have Airbus for the win. Sam is going to be joining us. Going to be talking about his journey from the flight sim to the flight deck. It's almost like a reverse of what we did with Katie. And I realised that as I was playing this, but yeah. We're also going to be talking about the new fly-by-wire updates, the new TOLIS updates, lots of A320 updates this week. Airsoft are previewing a Twin Otter, which makes me very excited because I really like the Twin Otter. Indie Builds previewed our A310, if I get the plane right. We're also going to be talking a bit about how much is too much for scenery. But without further ado, let's get to the bit you're waiting for. Let's see if my computer can handle 3 webcam streams at once. Sam, can you hear us?
I can. Hello.
He is grey at the moment. It will sort of come out.
The video will come through in a minute. Oh, there it is. Yeah, looks good.
There we are.
Yeah. So, how are we doing on this fine Sunday?
Beautiful.
So
beautiful. Thanks for having me.
It's thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
So, if you didn't know already, Sam has been around Flight Sim for donkey's years. I think it's fair to say. When did you first get started with it all?
Gosh, 2004, 2005. I don't know, something like that. Yeah, you guys were probably a little bit smaller than you are now.
Yeah,
just a bit. Yeah,
just a bit. At least you were alive. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. But... So yeah.
So what got you into Flight Sim in all those years ago when me and Tom were young spring chickens?
So when I was about 4 or 5, I think I'd gone on holiday at some point, and back in the day, this was would have been in the mid 90s, before 9/11. Obviously, you could go up in the flight deck, you go and see the pilots. That was awesome. I think from the first time I ever did that, I was like, wow, I was just amazed by it all. Even as a kid, just growing up, I just never lost that. I was just like, yeah. I think I already knew what I wanted to do when I was 5 or 6, and just growing up, as a kid into my early teens. Obviously, computers obviously came along a lot more. Obviously, you had better simulators. I started off with Flight Sim 2002, I think was my first.
You know what? I did too.
Yeah.
Interesting trivia there.
2002. Yeah. With the the old 747 add-on? I think I had a default 747 in it.
I think there was.
Yeah,
and then there was
an
Open Sky one later.
Yeah. And all the joys of Flight Sim 2004 and then FSX, which everyone hated when it first came out because it was nobody's PCs could run it. It was so
PCs still can't
unstable.
Run its modern day equivalent, can they?
Well, depending on how good it is. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't know. It was quite funny though, because obviously you had to put up with so many kind of the add-on sort of market wasn't. It was there, but it wasn't perhaps as mature as it is now, I guess. So I remember having to merge things. I remember the POS. Do you remember it was Project Open Sky merging that with the Wilco or those sort of models. PMDG has always been around for a long time, so I grew up on the PMDG sims, but that was about it really.
Well, I was just thinking, when you started in Flight Sim, PMDG were making manuals.
Yeah.
You've been
Yeah.
around the entire time PMDG have been making planes, which is really.
Planes.
I hope I'm not making you feel old here.
No, definitely no.
So,
Ancient.
and then after that, you you joined VATSIM pretty early on as well, didn't you?
Well,
in-
kind of. I'm old enough to have a 6-digit CID, which is like exciting.
That's the biggest flex in flight sim at the moment.
Yeah, 6-digit CID.
So
Yeah.
what got you onto that side of things?
So I do. I still, the really annoying thing is as well. I was 16. Well, I was 15, 16 when I joined VATSIM,
Yeah.
and I was really annoyed because I wish I'd have found it a couple of years earlier. But I just don't know how I found it. I really don't know how I found it. I can't remember how I discovered VATSIM back in the day. It's really weird, but
Yeah.
yeah. I just wanted to basically kind of make. I think I was probably looking for like something to do with AI. I wanted to kind of. I wanted to. I was looking into like multiplayer and stuff like that, and then I think I must have discovered it.
Yeah.
I know some people found like it was the old GameSpy servers, wasn't it?
Yeah. Before it moved, before Steam Edition, and
Oh, GameSpy, those were the
Yeah.
days. Honestly,
Yeah.
I feel like even I'm
So-
old flights.
yeah. I mean, I sort of started
So-
with the default ATC and that realized that was
Uh-huh.
rubbish pretty quick. Watched some videos on
it's
YouTube
terrific.
and then discovered VATSIM, and then I was like, I'm a bit scared of that, so I'll wait a minute and then get onto it and never
Yeah.
look back, I guess.
So,
And then
because you used to be ethics RTSI, like it was back in lead mentor.
I've pootled around various different jobs in VATSIM UK. So I've done what have I done? So I did Essex RTSM, I think it was, which was I the RTSM? I can't remember now actually. There was a few people. Basically, I was the same era as Gunnar. So the VATSIM president, me and Gunnar, basically we kind of joined VATSIM almost at the same sort of time. So
Nice.
we used to control quite a bit together. So I got to spend quite a bit of time with Gunnar, who's an absolute ledge. But so that was cool. Gunnar was RTSM as well from Essex. I would say all the best people come from Essex, but
Or are you saying the entire
Not sure
VATSIM
about me.
governance
Not
not
structure?
sure about me.
The VATSIM governance structure came from the Essex
Yeah.
RTS.
Exactly. That's where all the magic happened. That's where it all came from.
I was watching a
But,
clip yesterday actually where the Essex. It's a shame Essex isn't as busy as it used to be. Honestly.
Yeah. But it goes and fits and starts. Unfortunately, the airspace actually I find is really complicated actually, and a lot of people kind of struggle with it a little bit. But it was good fun. I did that for a little bit, and then I did mentoring. I got like 300 hours on Stansted Tower. Which
Gosh.
is like, but yeah.
When did you
this was
last
back in the
control
day?
Stansted?
Oh, long time ago.
Yeah. I guess now you
Um,
just control London mainly.
Yeah, well, I just obviously over the years, the annoying thing was because it took me ages to kind of get my S. Well, it was weird. Back in the day, you had an S1, then you had an S3, and then a C1, and you had to. I think I can't remember it, but it was something like you got your S1 automatically. You didn't have to do this OBS to S1 stuff, and you get your S1, and then you had to be approved and signed off by a mentor to be able to use your voice on the network.
Oh, I was reading about that in
Yeah?
Discord the other day.
Yeah. So you had to be able to, you had to get signed off to use your voice, and then you would then do an S3 exam, which was on tower. So you'd pass a tower exam, which would then get your S3, and you then have to train to then do your approach. I don't really understand how it worked. And then your C1 exam would basically be on an approach position, but then that would allow you to control area.
Yeah.
And didn't you have to
And the
do C3 exam
mysterious
as
C2? No?
Never had. Nah, that was never used. I never saw that used. It was just S1,
Yeah.
S3, and C3.
That's weird. I remember when it is in Euroscope, but I wonder what it's there for. I guess it's one to ask someone else.
I think I saw someone logged on as a CT once upon a time in South Korea.
Really?
Not seen it before.
Yeah.
Not seen
Must
it
have been a
since.
misclick.
Yeah, it is one of those like things about VATSIM that you never really understand, but you just know is there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
That's good. Yeah.
if you didn't already know, and I don't think Sam will mind us talking about this, Sam does drive planes now and then, not just in the sim, but in the real world.
Attempt to.
How did that sort of come about then? Because you said you were into it from an early age, but what got you
Yeah.
actually started into actually getting into the whole real world flying?
Yeah. So I started when I was 19. So slightly sad story. Basically, I lost my mum when I was 19 through it was a short illness, basically, unfortunately. But she had basically like a life insurance policy with work, which allowed me to fund my flight training.
Okay.
So I used basically that money to go to CTC effectively, which is now known, I think, as L3 Harris. I think they're called now.
Yeah.
But back in the day they were known as CTC, and went out to New Zealand when I was about 19, so quite young. And yeah, just went through the training. Spent a year in New Zealand, came back to the UK, spent about 4 or 5 months, I think, and finished in sort of January, February time, 2011. I want to say, yeah, it was 2011 because it was just after like there was a financial downturn in 0809.
Yeah.
And it was actually kind of a good time to start because generally it obviously takes about 2 years roughly to kind of go through the whole training process. So by the time you're getting into 2011 and 12, kind of the world was kind of picking up a bit, and people were going to start to need pilots. And actually, in the end, I had to wait about 9 months maybe for a job. So it didn't actually work out too badly. And then I ended up doing a few months just working in some odd jobs just to kind of get me through. But yeah, I got a job off from EasyJet back in the day, and
that was out in Hamburg, wasn't it, or was that?
No, that was at Gatwick to start with. So I was at Gatwick for a year, then I went to Luton for 2 years, and then I went to Hamburg for another year.
Which one was your favourite?
Hamburg, without a doubt. Cool
Why
place.
is that?
Just cool place. Well, I've always loved Germany, and it was just an amazing opportunity to go and live out there, go and work.
You know
out there.
German?
Ein bisschen.
Oh.
If you watch some streams, honestly, just little bits get dropped in now and then.
Yeah. Any Germans visiting my stream will get a very, very warm, a very warm welcome in German. But yeah, no, it's a nice opportunity to practice it actually as well, which is pretty cool. But I learned at school. I also learned whilst I was there, and it was just a cool place. If you haven't been to Germany, or particularly in Hamburg, you've got to go. It's a really cool city. They've got like especially if you're a miniature railway fan as well, because they've got.
They've got that really it's like Railway World.
It's miniature. It's called Miniature Wonderland.
And they have that mini airport as well, isn't that?
Mm-hmm.
No, as well.
Yeah, it's sort of semi-based off Hamburg Airport, but yeah, it's sort of called Knuffingen Airport, and they've kind of got little airplane models that sort of fly in and fly off. They've kind of got like a little. They've got like kind of like they sort of try and model like a part of the world. So they'll do like a bit of America. They'll be like sort of German bits. It's pretty cool. Classic. Yeah, really, really good.
So what advice would you give to someone who wants to go and start that flight training? Because I guess at the moment we're in a similar stage to what you had coming into
the financial
yours.
downturn.
Yeah. But I think this one's it's slightly different though.
Yeah.
In the sense that you've got to obviously bear in mind that in that last downturn, nearly it'll be scary 12, 13 years ago now, there were job redundancies, but the scale of it from an aviation perspective wasn't so bad.
It wasn't a total shutdown.
No. Whereas Corona has absolutely decimated aviation. It's nice to see America certainly bouncing back a little bit better than it is over here. In the sense, it's nice to see that it is bouncing back there. But that doesn't really affect us because I can't get a job in America, so it's kind of irrelevant. Unfortunately, because of all
generally tend to be less supportive.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the government has done this sort of, with the furlough scheme and stuff like that. So they certainly have been more supportive than some other countries have. But from an aviation perspective, it's hard because at the end of the day, if other countries aren't going to let us in, and if other countries have restrictions, then there's no point flying an empty plane of people because people aren't going to fly if the restrictions are still there. So at the end of the day, I think it's just supporting the companies and the airlines until things open up a bit, which I think come this summer, I think things are starting to get a bit better.
A 2-week testing window and self-isolation, I think, puts a lot of people off.
Yeah, for sure.
I know last summer we tried to get to Holland for a week away, and we ended up self-isolating for 2 weeks after because they changed the rules. So honestly, nobody knows at the moment, and hopefully the summer does make it better.
Hopefully. But yeah, as I said, in terms of like obviously looking at the industry and trying to assess like what's the right time and all this sort of stuff, I remember the last downturn, BALPA, which is the British Airline Pilots Association, and other pilot associations around the world, they weren't actively discouraging people from training. I don't think during the 08-09 financial crisis, whereas now they're actually actively saying, look, don't train because you will be potentially waiting quite some time. Because don't forget as well, there's hundreds of thousands of pilots who've been laid off. So and they've got experience. So airlines are going to take those guys back first because, of course, they're going to be easy to train and kind of get back up and going. I know at Mylan, for example, there's a couple of hundred people who are waiting to come back to flying before then recruiting on top of that. So realistically speaking, that's going to be I think another 2 years. So if I was going to do this all over again, and I was a keen aspiring pilot, like I'm sure you guys are, or some of the people that are watching are, I'd certainly say definitely maybe in a year's time, start in a year's time. But I probably wouldn't be going to do it now because I think you'd be waiting a while. Ideally, what you want to do is kind of really kind of plan a 2-year training period if you're going to go to CTC, L3, Oxford, FT Hareth is meant to be a really good school as well. And kind of come out as fresh as possible after your training, kind of hopefully ideally into a flying job. It's really hard though. So unfortunately, with flying, at least with commercial flying, it still very much is the preserve of the middle class. So there are schemes out there, or that hopefully there will be one day anyway, that airlines are going to come together and make these schemes where it will encourage people based on their merits, not necessarily just how much money they have.
Do you think prior to COVID there was work being done on that already?
A little bit. So I know British Airways had like the FPP, the Future Pilot Program, which I know people who've gone through that, and it enabled those people to get jobs and to get into the seat of an airliner when they wouldn't have otherwise been able to have afforded the the $100+ grand training costs for that.
I think the cost of training just massively puts people off.
Yeah, it's a huge risk. That's 100 grand. You could buy a house in the north of England for that. Do you know what I mean? That's a house.
Yeah.
Hey, I live in the north.
So, but that's a good thing. It's living down south is very expensive. Very expensive. But do you know what I mean? It's a real shame because there are lots of good people out there who would make amazing airline pilots, and they can't get into the industry because of how much it costs. I was lucky. I'm an outlier. I don't wish for my situation on anyone. Do you know what I mean? I'm in this situation, and I am in the position I am because of some unfortunate things that have happened.
Yeah.
So I'm not really a good example of who to follow and whatnot. But the people I trained with certainly were a mix of people. Basically, most of them had funding. And they had parents who remortgaged their houses, or
I know people definitely with the remortgaging houses.
Yeah, remortgaging houses, or having loans that are secured onto their parents' mortgages or their parents' houses. So unfortunately, it's not cheap, and those schemes I don't think are going to come back because of the economic situation for at least a couple of years, I reckon. So what I would say is use the time wisely. Go and maybe go and earn some money or do some training. If you're at university, stay in university. It might even be a good time to go to university, to be honest. If you're sort of at the 17, 18 mark, get a degree, have a backup. That's my only problem. That's what I've been very nervous. I've been very lucky, very blessed to still hold on to my job. But if I'd lost my job, at 19, I didn't have anything to fall back on. So, yeah.
And that's the big risk going in, I guess. You've got the 2-year training period. You're putting it on your parents' mortgage. Then in the end, you come out and you're not even then sure if you're going to get employed.
You're very certain you're qualified for one job.
So,
and you got to pay it back. So, pretty bleak.
Yeah, it is. But that's the realism of it. I know, like we're all dreamers. And it don't get me wrong, it's an amazing job. I love my job to bits. It's awesome. And definitely don't want to discourage anyone from doing it, but certainly just to go into it with their eyes opened and
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd hate for people to go bankrupt or to have a really bad experience.
But
Sure.
lockdown did bring us the Airbus for the Win Twitch channel.
Say again, sorry.
Lockdown did bring us your return to Twitch.
Indeed.
So before we talk about your return to Twitch, I need to bring this up.
Oh,
Talk
no.
about your old time streaming, your streams on London back in the day.
You remember those? Do you
Yeah.
remember those? You really remember those? Oh man.
I also remember when you were introducing Obs to S1.
Oh grief, yeah. Oh dear. Yeah, so this was actually 2015, this is when I was in Hamburg. Yeah. So obviously 5-6 years ago, started on Twitch as just a very small stream. Still am a small stream, but yeah. Doing London Control. I was the original London, not London Controller, but London Control. And me and my good friend Tom, we did some streams on that, which was quite good fun. But I didn't really go anywhere that much. I don't think it went anywhere that much.
Is this Tom Follow the Greens, Tom? Or is
Follow
it...
the Greens, Tom, exactly. Isn't
Yeah,
he?
I was going to say.
So
he makes the return at the same time as well.
He's also exactly. So he's obviously doing really well as well, which is good to see. And yeah, well, that was quite a good laugh. We had quite a bit of a laugh doing that, and then I sort of did a spin-off, kind of just doing flight sim as well, because I thought I didn't want to use the joint account because we were both using that the streaming.
Oh, the London Control account.
London Control,
yeah.
So we were both using that, and then I kind of did a spin-off because I wanted to do some stuff with flight simming.
Okay.
So, but as I said, I don't know. If I'd have stuck with it, 5-6 years ago, who knows where we'd be? I don't know. that would have been awesome.
I could say you could have been a forerunner to London Controller on London Control.
I don't think so. I'm not that exciting, but I think, I think at the same time, I don't know. I don't know. It's weird. I unfortunately just life took me in a different direction. I just didn't have the time for it at the time because I was moving back to the UK from Germany, and I was, I've moved all over the place in the last couple of years. And
that was about the time you ended up doing ATC training, like we were talking about as well. The big job.
Yeah, some other personal issues as well. So yeah, exactly. It's just lots going on, and I did ATC training director as well in the UK for a little while, which was fun. Brought about the sort of ended up bringing about what was the change that we brought about in the end?
What was it called? Central Training.
Central Training. It was kind of a love child of Adam Markley. I'm sure you remember Adam.
Oh yes.
So I worked with him before he resigned, before he stepped down. And then I sort of just kind of carried on kind of this little project that we were kind of sort of developing. I don't really know whether it's made anything better or not. Effectively, we turn things from these little mini regionalized little areas into kind of like these massive pools. The idea of pooling like mentors around, because a lot of the issues we were having was
the Northern RTS was there.
You'd have these bigger RTSs where they had lots of mentors, and you'd have like that under the Southwest, God bless them. We'd like have one, or Essex, actually, which was struggling as well. Essex had like 1 or 2 mentors, you'd have it was very kind of patchy, and you'd have areas where people were just, they were hammering out the trainees, and other places where just nothing was happening. So that's part of the reason.
Still to an extent happens, but it's kind of unavoidable when you've
radar student, can't you?
It's unavoidable when they're just mentors and they're just doing it in their free time. So they'll do what they like, I guess.
When you still see people on Twitch come and say, "How long will it take me to get my S1?" Do you see many of those?
Oh, it literally used to keep me up all night. I swear. The Obs to S1, it was a never-ending thing because you just have so many people. Like it was just a deluge, and it's really hard because
I think Alex Beard used to just like.
Yeah.
Well, it's like trying to do a job that you can just never finish.
Yeah.
The harder you work, the harder you have to work.
You don't have enough people. You don't have enough people. You don't have enough mentors. There's not enough time in the day basically to try and cover everyone and try and give everyone the training that they want to do. So it's just as it VATSIM, and in terms of the amount of people that have come on the network in the last 5 years, it's just gone.
Yeah, it's insane.
Crazy.
And even in the last year, seeing the CIDs go up so quickly, I guess partly thanks to the new sim and possibly like P3DV5, XPlane 11 replacing XPlane 10. massive explosion, which is good to see because
Yeah.
from a pilot's perspective, at least, it means more ATC mostly. More people are training, more people mentoring, and things are scaling up.
For sure. But I
mean,
think sometimes, yeah.
It's a lot more
Sorry.
designed to be scaled up. Sorry, no, this is the thing with Discord calls, isn't it?
Yeah,
We,
it is designed to be scaled up.
I should say, before we went live, my computer decided to have an absolute fit and just turned off 3 times in 10 minutes. And I was just like, yay, this is fun.
Well, it's working so far, so we're
Touch wood.
touch wood,
Yeah.
it's going well.
So,
Yeah.
Anyway, so London Controls back in the day,
Mhm.
and then Airbus for the Win became the spin-off.
Yeah, so I created the account when I was actually. Do you know, the name came about actually. It was a bit of banter against Gary Oliver, who's some of you might know Simfest through Simfest
Yeah.
UK. So I was on the Simfest team a few years back. We were doing one of the I think it was a couple of years ago. We were doing obviously the Simfest, the World Flight Week.
World Flight, yeah.
And I needed, I don't know, I was creating a new Twitch account. This was obviously a few years ago anyway, but I was needing a new account, and obviously for a bit of banter, I thought, do you know what, obviously because it's Boeing at 747 and all this sort of stuff, I thought, we could put 2 fingers up to the 747, and I was sort of like, yeah, Airbus for the win. So that's where it came about, basically.
How did you
And
enjoy being on the Simfest team? I should just probably throw in because
yeah, it was amazing. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun.
and
Very
amazing
tiring
work as well.
Very tiring. Yeah. It's just amazing, like the amount of money they raise as well. It's so good. And Gary and the team do a really good job of getting everything sorted and ready, and having a good time as well. It's important that the team has a good time as well as everyone else that's watching, because obviously if the team are having a good time, then that's going to roll over. People are going to enjoy watching if the people they're watching are having a laugh as well.
Exactly.
It was
So,
for them
yeah.
this year. I know they were Fraser was saying after this, it was a really, even more than usual, really stressful year. With the fact they didn't have nearly as big a crew.
Mm-hmm.
And would you want to do it again?
It's tiring. It's tiring streaming for that long if you've got fewer than normal people. You have to stay up for so long. You guys have both done 20+ hour streams now, and you know how not easy
I like how
they
you
are.
say now. Like that was just an endurance challenge.
Yeah, I mean,
good.
It's not easy for them, so gotta give them a lot of credit.
It's funny actually. The second time around, I was dreading it because I'd obviously done one already, and I thought, wow, this is going to be hard. But the second time around, it was tricky. But I think when I got to the last 4 hours, I kind of got this like second wind, and I was like, wow, it was kind of it was quite good fun actually towards the end of it.
Did you get to take part in a booze cruise? That is the ultimate question.
What, the frothy coffee?
Oh yes.
I don't know what you're talking about. No comment.
I got really annoyed. Obviously, there was no booze cruise this year because of COVID.
Yeah.
But the year before, there were 2 booze cruises, and I managed to have things over both of them, and it was just very sad.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think next year should be this year 2021 hopefully should be much better.
Easier. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
We do have a couple of questions. If you're watching live and you want to ask a question, there should be a link in the chat or flightsimweekly.com/ask. Mainly about the real world. The first question is, what's the favourite aircraft you've flown? I'm assuming that's in the real world, but I guess you give an answer for both. Or maybe they're the same.
Oh, maybe. A favourite aircraft? Well, I've only ever flown 320, so I've been on the 320 for nearly a decade now, so I guess it's the 320.
Name gives it away, I guess.
Out of the series, though, out of all the different series, I guess the 321 is probably my favourite because it just feels like I'm flying a slightly bigger piece of tin, and it's it's more, just feels more stable. It rides through the turbulence a bit better. So that being said, the 319 is also nice as well because you're not so worried about banging the tail in because again, it's slightly shorter.
Got a lot more reserve power as well, haven't you? On the 319.
You don't really tend to notice that too much, to be honest with you. It's more really an issue of because the 321 equally, if you're not that heavy, that thing can really rocket up. as well. But yeah, so 320 was nice. Obviously, the Neos and the new stuff as well is also nice. 321, 320 Neo is also pretty nice to fly because they're kind of brand new, and it's like basically driving a new car or something like that. It's that kind of idea.
I saw they've now started, and this was the thing I found interesting on the Airbus. I think one airline now has the A380 ACP.
The new audio control panel where you can dial the frequencies in and adjust it
from the 380.
RMP. Yeah.
And would you ever considering? Oh, sorry, I'll ask after. Sorry.
No, go on, Tom.
I was gonna say because you were saying about the 321, you like it for the bigger size. Don't we all? Would you consider flying a larger Airbus if you got the opportunity? Or larger Boeing, but
yeah. I mean, like, I would like to ideally fly something a little bit bigger as well in the future. So maybe the 350, I think, is probably going to be the future. Maybe 380. I'm not sure yet, but don't know if there's much future in the 380. Unfortunately, it's very vulnerable to issues, financial issues in that respect. Almost every airline around the world's retired them, apart from I think Emirates and BA and a couple of other ones as well. So
I think Qantas bring them all back.
Qantas as well.
Well, yeah.
Oh yeah, I think Qantas are bringing them back as well, aren't they? Yeah.
They seem to keep changing their mind because it's not cheap to store these aircraft. So you got to kind of make a decision with them, but then getting rid of them is not cheap either because you got to buy something to replace them with. I guess that's the problem that Emirates have. If they get rid of all their A380s, they got to buy some more 777s or A3 or some new Airbus.
Well, I don't know about the 777 because even Etihad are retiring their 777-300s. It's like I thought they were pretty efficient and whatnot, but Etihad are retiring the 777-300. They're not even that old.
Yeah,
crazy. I was just like, I couldn't believe that.
Yeah, and I guess with
I'll tell you what plane I think's sweet spot: the 350 1000.
1000,
it's such a nice plane.
I think from a passenger experience, I've heard it's good, but I think from a cabin crew perspective, they hate it because, depending on how the galleys are laid out, but it's not a very crew-friendly airplane, I've heard.
The airline's getting the most out of their space on the new planes.
Exactly. I think that is part of it.
I think that's one thing about the flight deck, because the airline can't really cram that in because it's there.
But there is, and that's the thing. Often people have these sort of romantic ideas of airlines, but ultimately, airlines they're sort of effectively run by accountants who kind of have these algorithms basically say, look, you can squeeze more people in if you do this, this, and this. And it's like, well, the cabin crew won't have as much space, but that doesn't really factor into their. It's just interesting. Different airlines sort of just run on different mentalities, and the way that they sort of the way that they order the planes, the way that they configure them as well is all done slightly differently. So
and it's a game of very fine margins as well. So
exactly,
can't do too much about it.
They're definitely airlines are definitely not very philanthropic, in that respect. They're they're not in it for the charity. They're in it to make money.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what is your least favourite quirk or thing? So we've got all the bug in the question, but I don't think real life planes have bugs in the sense of a sim aircraft. What's the least favourite quirk of the real life Airbus?
It's my least favourite quirk.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. See, I've flown so seldom this year. It's just I've hardly had to interact with the plane at all. So I think my airline at the moment, the airline I fly for anyway at the moment, we tend to leave the aircraft powered overnight on the ground power, so we don't turn it completely off. But when I was at EasyJet, we always used to do cold and dark. And when you start the Airbus up from cold and dark on a very cold morning, it doesn't like waking up basically and getting out of bed. And so often there'll be a lot of maybe computer resets you have to do. So for example, you might have to reset the flight directors, for example.
Yeah.
There'll be certain other things that you have to pull circuit breakers via the QRH. Obviously, don't just pull them. Go, we'll just pull the circuit breaker Charlie 4 or whatever. But obviously via the QRH, and in a structured way. But that sort of idea. Because normally what would happen is, you have very minimal time in the morning to kind of get the airplane started and to get ready. and that can take 5-10 minutes, and that's quite a lot of time when you have only about half an hour to kind of get the airplane ready before pushback, and you've got to do a brief, and get the paperwork sorted out. So it's a bit of a pain.
And
You a
just
fan of the early mornings or
No.
not? No. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
pointless asking that, I guess.
what's your ideal time of departure?
Well, so I like lates basically. So anything checking in at like 11 o'clock midday, something like that is really nice.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on, I just need to get the cat. The cat, come on, off. My cat's basically going for a little adventurous.
Adventure across the desk.
She's going adventure across the desk. Yeah. Naughty. But anyway, sorry. But yeah.
A Flight Sim Weekly exclusive, folks.
I know.
Yeah, okay.
Let's see if I get. Where is she? I don't know. I could probably go and get her, but she's probably going to go and she's probably going to run off, isn't she? Hello. Got that. There we go. So look,
if you are just tuning in to Flight Sim Weekly on live show, obviously do feel free to ask your question at flightsimweekly.com/ask. Joining us in the flight deck.
This is Bella.
Bella is such a cutie. Honestly,
she is gorgeous, isn't she? She's a good girl, isn't she? Oh, she's lovely. Anyway, she only tolerates it for a little while, and then she's like, "No, I want my freedom again."
Someone's just said in chat, my cat destroyed my monitor, my old monitor. And
yeah.
I was just like, oh yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Very upset when I wake up in the morning.
Wow. I'd not heard about that.
I don't let them alone too much in the office anyway without supervision because I don't trust them too much.
I didn't need a cat to destroy my monitor. I managed to destroy my old one myself.
Oh, really?
It was down to a fidget spinner.
Oh no!
Yeah, I was actually revising. I was going through the S1 Moodle at the time, and fidget spinnering away, and
Sam wrote
wasn't holding on quite as.
Sam was working on that.
Yeah, wasn't holding on tight enough.
What was
Sam wrote the
S1
Moodle.
Oh, a little bit. I don't. It's all a blur now. To be fair, it's all a blur.
Yeah. I guess so.
A long time ago. If they're still using that, that's amazing. I don't know. It's quite sweet to see people still using some of the stuff that I've kind of maybe contributed
I think it's changed, but I think we're still course builders on it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I worked on that as well.
I mean, it shouldn't really. There isn't a huge amount that's going to change. Maybe a bit of RT differences, but yeah. No, I enjoyed the ATC side of things. I do. I don't control London as much as I should, but I just don't have enough time at the moment between streaming and real life.
What's your favourite sector to control?
Oh, there we go. That's a good question. So I did my C1 on South. South's good fun. It's the one I know the best. Again, the annoying thing is, though, it's keeping up with the changes because the airspace has changed quite a lot recently and all the sectors and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, even now, if I went back on, I'd have to have a little review of the standing agreements, like the different levels.
South is massive
sectors.
now.
Yeah.
That's one of the things.
Yeah, so I'd say South, actually. South is probably my favourite. TC South as well, any of the TC sectors. Quite enjoy doing like low level kind of the nitty gritty. I quite like doing like streaming airplanes, climbing, descending, and then kind of putting them back en route. It's quite good fun. Quite enjoy doing that.
I'm training on London AC Central at the moment, and TC North. That's all I will say.
Yeah, so Central is really hard. It's a hard sector.
Well, it's
so busy.
They've made it small now, so it is just Daventry and Clacton. You don't have London Upper stuff. So London Upper is just like the bit that sort of covers the capital.
Yeah.
It is above TC Capital. There's a lot of intricacies in that area.
You can understand why pilots are see all these different London sectors online, going, who do I speak to? It's the extra sectors is good for when it gets busy because you need that management. It's really hard from a VATSIM management perspective with pilots because pilots are going to go okay, there's 10 Londons online. Who do I speak to?
When you've got Clacton 12, 13, 14 split, you've got TCE split for an Amsterdam event.
I mean, I'm the person whenever I get handed off to London, at least back when I didn't know the frequencies. Now I sort of know them a bit. I do this in other countries. They say, contact London Control 132.6, and I'm not really listening to the frequency. So I always just have VPilot up on the left. I say, just contact London 13, and then I'm looking. And there's 4 London sectors, and I'm like, oh. Yeah.
Is that
Always
one of the
mess.
things you
Yeah.
miss not being able to do in the real world?
Yeah,
Have a
no. Well,
frequency list.
yeah, I know, but because we've got CPDLC in a lot of space now in Europe, it's actually awesome. It means you can actually just see the frequency. It's actually like VPilot, where somebody gives you a text alias handoff. You know, .ho
Yeah.
is my one. .ho .handoff. But yeah, it's quite handy. But yeah, sometimes we miss it in the real world. You know, like a lot of the time, people sort of think, "Oh yeah, in the real world, pilot's probably perfect, and we get it right every time." No, not at all. You know, we miss a lot of the time. Often when I'm flying with someone who I'm having a really good day out with, I'm having a laugh and stuff like that. Sometimes we could get a little bit distracted, and we might miss our call sign. So yeah,
Yeah.
you do
Are
try and
there any
listen out.
sectors that get particularly irritated when you're not listening? I guess the lower you go, but
Well, any of them, to be fair. But
yeah.
I think when we come to London, we tend to focus because London is generally quite busy.
Yeah.
And I find if we're ever like in places like Italy, for example, sometimes it can be quite busy. And when we get towards sort of the lower airspace in Italy, it can be quite interesting. France, you have to pay quite attention because if there's a lot of Air France around, obviously they communicate in French, so. Sometimes, in some ways, it's easier actually in France because if they're speaking English, the chances are they might be speaking to you. Where
Yeah.
you know,
If
Yeah.
it's French
yeah,
and you don't understand it, you can just tune it out and just.
yeah. But the only reason I don't like that though, not that I'm sure French people are like, yeah, we are France, we are French, haha, we can speak French. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough. However, from a flight safety perspective, it means that the other pilots can't really hear what's going on. So, for example, sorry. So, for example, if you're like at Charles de Gaulle and I'm taxiing out, and let's say I'm in an EasyJet A320 speaking English, for example, ATC, and you've got this Air France is coming up on the left. Obviously, ATC hasn't said anything to us about who's first. They might say, to the Air France, you're first, but in French, but they haven't said anything to us. So, how do we know who's going first? If that makes sense.
I know someone
Yeah.
who used to be based at Charles de Gaulle, and someone's like,
Yeah.
I know, and that person did not like all the French being spoken.
So I don't have an issue against French. It's a beautiful language, a lovely country, but just
Flight safety.
There are other examples from a flight safety perspective. Yeah,
Sure.
it's
I
a little
remember
bit,
like the brief.
yeah.
Lots of pilots like to do the briefing in French from Paris, even at
Yeah.
airlines like EasyJet.
Yeah. But it's as I said, I think it's all part of the fun. I think it's not a perfect world, even in the aviation in the real world aviation world. So it's quite funny sometimes when you see some similarities on VATSIM from the real world.
Yeah.
VATSIM is definitely still a long way to go to the real thing. It's never going to be perfectly real because it's a network of volunteers and hobbyists.
They let me on places. Come on.
So
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. No. And me, I'm terrible, and I'm terrible. But like sometimes there are some similarities. You'd be quite surprised.
Yeah. I mean, I was I think it was Flight Deck to Sim. I was watching a YouTube video of him a couple of years back when he was first trying out VATSIM. He was getting on it and saying how he didn't know really anything about VATSIM, and he was really impressed with how he just calls up using the exact same phraseology he uses in the real world or whatever, and it's actually there. So I mean,
and then right after you've got to respond to someone saying easy 1, 2, 3
request
clearance.
IFR clearance to Heathrow.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things about VATSIM. It definitely keeps you on your toes.
Yeah.
Anyway, just talking about flying different airlines. So Airbus for the win started off properly about last year.
Yeah, so we've literally just celebrated nearly a year of streaming. Me and KP were Katie Pilot. We all pretty much started within about a week of each other.
All of us started because I started at the same time.
Yeah. So it's been a really good learning experience for myself. I think hopefully other people have learned from the stream.
Absolutely.
That's been my main kind of thing really, is like just sharing a little bit of real world experience, like not like pragmatic experience, stuff like that. People can learn from. There's lots of really good content on Twitch at the moment. If you're a kind of aspiring wannabe pilot or somebody who just wants to basically wants to be as realistic as possible when it comes to an airline flying, A320 flying, there's never been a better time to get information. When I was
as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, CRJ. 737 now as well. There's loads, even light aircraft as well. There's so many good streamers out there who are sharing their their expertise and their insight, and it's really helpful. I think it's really helpful.
Yeah.
I wish
Just...
where were they when I was a teenager and needed all this information? It's like I just remember as a teenager trying to fly my desk sim, and I just had no idea what I was doing. I was like, trying to get the blooming PMDG 737 engines to start as well took me an absolute age. I was like, turning I turned the packs off. Okay, and all sorts of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. A few more questions. Describe your worst flying experience in the real world.
Yeah,
If you can think of one.
I can. So the worst experience so far, I'd say, was we were going over France. Lovely place. No, it was just coincidental. I love France, by the way. Just lots of love to France. But yeah,
He's even got an emote from you.
No. France for the win, exactly. We were flying over the Alps actually, and the really bad turbulence basically, and it was the worst turbulence I've ever experienced. And it was so bad actually that we were really struggling to maintain altitude. Thankfully, we managed to get the belts on, and people managed to get sat down and strapped in. So nobody was injured or anything like that. That was fine. But it was just a very uncomfortable situation. I think one of the things you, as a pilot, you pride yourselves on is trying to give the passengers or the people in the back a smooth ride. Well, for everyone, we just want a nice smooth ride, a smooth flight. And avoid the weather, avoid the bumps, all that sort of stuff. And so it felt really disappointing, to have that experience. You don't want to traumatize anyone in the back because that there are people who are going to be slightly nervous. So most of the passengers are probably all right about it, but there'll always be a few people, and you don't want to traumatize those people anymore. So that was a bit of
I've got to admit, when I first flew, and I've been interested in flying something for years prior to that, I was nervous on my first real flight.
Really?
Who wouldn't be? Well,
yeah.
I mean,
I think the thing about swimming is a bit more about what can go wrong.
I guess so, but actually, there's so much redundancy built into modern airliners now that really, it is pretty damn safe.
Yeah. I think everyone really knows that it's the safest way to travel or whatever, maybe bar trains or whatever. But I think
it is officially the safest.
Is it? Wow.
Mechanically, but also the way that they do their training as well. So a lot of the time, a lot of it's to do with the training as well. The people in the front who are driving the thing. That makes a big difference as well. So a lot of it's interesting. Even the last 10 years of flying for myself, I've noticed a difference in the way that they train us. There's a lot more emphasis now on CRM. I'm sure you guys know what CRM is, crew resource management.
Yeah. They do full modules and everything on it.
And that's a slightly different thing with airline flying versus sim flying. Is that as a flight simmer, it's just you. You're the captain. You're doing everything. You do everything. You do the radios. On VATSIM as well. You do everything. You make all the decisions. Whereas when you and actually when you're doing your early flight training as well, that's pretty much the same mentality. You're the captain. You're the pilot in command. You make all the decisions. But when you then transition onto flying an airliner, actually it's a two cooperation, and you have to share things. And ultimately, the captain's in charge. But a good captain always makes good use of their crew. They always listen. They always facilitate people to be able to speak up and intervene. So crew resource management, or non-technical skills as they're also called, is all about encouraging people to say, look, there's something wrong. And as I said, the best crew in the world, basically people who've got really good CRM.
Sure. So in the sim, do you find yourself with your hands full, coming from an airline?
Yeah. Well, actually, what I do is I sort of I kind of do have like a split personality thing, where I do my PF roles, and then I pretend to be the pilot monitoring. So it keeps the two, because we have like flows. So we so you do for example, after start you do engine mode select to normal, APU bleed off, APU off, and then I'd then go and pretend to be the pilot monitoring, and then do like the ground spoilers, rudder,
Sure.
zero the rudder trim, do the flaps, etc. That way, I don't. It's good for me from a training perspective, so I don't forget how to do the real thing when I go to work.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I do it.
I don't know.
And maybe that's helpful for people as well, to learn.
Yeah.
Do you find that flying in the sim helps you keep a lot of your real world like in your mind still?
Yeah, definitely. It's been great. Yeah, I've told some of my colleagues that I've flown with this last year. I've just said, look, because I think it's just really helped. We have had recency sims as well, but it's certainly prevented me from being less rusty than a lot of the guys I've flown with. For sure, really helpful. But obviously, the FS. Obviously, I fly using the FS Labs. People that watch me know that. They'll know how much I love it, and the various foibles that I've had with it. But to be honest with you, as a real world pilot, it's pretty damn good. It's been really helpful for keeping current.
We are. And what would you say has been your favourite moment streaming that you don't think you could have in the real world? Well, I'm sure there are many, but
many. Well, it's certainly nice to be able to have a beer or have a few drinks whilst relaxing and chilling out and having a bit of laugh.
I just remember when you were singing. I think it was it
Bangkok?
No, it's Greatest Showman. I think
Greatest Showman. Yeah, having a laugh, doing some. Yeah, I like to have a bit of a laugh. I like to have a little chuckle, because you can't do that in the real thing. But
yeah, and the frequent flyers can't request to go around.
This is true. I've got an amazing amount of go around practice this year. That's for sure.
So you're so ready when you get properly back to work.
How many more go arounds do you think you've done in the sim compared to how many you do in the real?
Too many. I think on average, generally, most pilots will tend to average out about one a year. Generally, I've some. If you've been really unlucky, you might have a few, but generally about one a year tends to be most good.
So do you remember how many you've done, roughly?
What, in the real thing?
Yeah, well, yeah. Do you have any exciting go around or interesting ones? Have you had any?
I don't know. I've had
particularly notable ones.
Yeah, we had a wind shear go around in Keflavik, because we suddenly had a massive.
Yeah.
We were like, it wasn't that exciting. We were about 500-600 feet, and just the aircraft sort of kind of sunk basically, and we're like, oh. And then you felt it, and you're like, oh no, it's going to say, isn't it? Wind shear. I was like, oh great. So I did a wind shear toga. So we did a go around there. So that was pretty exciting. Then came back round, landed fine. A couple of times flying into some of the London airports where the aircraft didn't get off the runway in time. That was like, oh great, here we go.
Yeah, makes you feel like you're flying on VATSIM, I guess.
Yeah.
Does it make you irritated when you see planes with VATSIM go around when there's plenty of room to get down?
Well, the thing is, a lot. This is the thing, actually. A lot of controllers don't really. I'm not saying this to you guys, but a lot of controllers who perhaps haven't got necessarily that real world perspective. And that's not meant to be patronising in any way.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of times people will go around and they're like, oh, why did you go around? And controllers will think, oh, that was my fault, or why did they go around? It was great. It was looking great. And a lot of the time, you might not be able to see what's going on in their cockpit, but the chances are, they, for whatever reason, they might not be stable. Most airlines have 1,000 feet stability criteria, where you need to have your flaps in the right, your flaps in the landing position. So in the Airbus, either 3 or full. Your speed needs to be at the approach speed, so it'll be about 130 knots roughly.
That must be so tight with the 160-4 as well. A lot of airports.
It can be, but again, different airlines slightly change on that. So most airlines are 1,000 feet, but some of them are 1,000 feet above the ground. Some are 1,000 feet above the aerodrome level, and so it depends on whether it's based on the barometric altimeter or the RADALT, the radial altimeter. So my airline, we use the radial altimeter. So it can be. We always have to think a little bit about where is that 1,000 feet going to be. We have to look at the terrain around the approach and go, it could be a bit earlier, it could be later. If it's going to be earlier, then we're going to be like, okay, well, we configure a bit earlier, so make sure we are definitely stable. Other places can be a bit later. For example, like Leeds, Bradford, the Rose of Yorkshire International Airport.
My finest time in VATSIM UK has always been having that Gary Oliver winning that competition.
For sure.
But
so
you get a bit more time with Leeds.
Yeah, you do exactly. Yeah, because obviously Leeds is on a hill, and obviously then there's a kind of like a weird sort of valley that is like a dip before the runway. So the 1,000 feet basically comes really, really late. Ultimately, I think it's very
Yeah.
weird. But
Even
you
though it's
definitely
not
have to think
actually
about it a
1,000
little bit.
feet, but
Does it ever throw you
Yeah.
off when the radio altimeter's not kind of going at the rate you would well, I guess at Leeds you would expect it to be going
Yeah.
a bit all over the place, but is it ever weird when you, especially with Leeds, I don't know, if the runway bumps make it any, well, it's not really many feet, but
No,
does it ever,
one of the places it's probably particularly noticeable is Mykonos. So if you ever fancy loading up in the sim and giving Mykonos a go, again, I don't think it's not simulated perfectly,
yeah,
but and I've never landed in Mykonos as well because it's captains only, and I've only ever been there as an FO. But I tell you what, whenever I've been in there, I'm like, I'm not sad about that at all. I'm going to Mykonos, I'm like, good luck, captain. Not good luck, Mick. Whatever, like, good luck, mate. It's just because effectively it's a narrow runway to an upslope. It's kind of like a sort of kind of pointy sort of shape, basically. The threshold, the runway finds you rather than you landing on it, basically.
yeah,
And so it's like the first time it was like 50, 30. I think it missed 40 completely. This is the EasyJet where they have the 40 call out. It's like 50, 30, 20. It was like, whoa, smash. Very,
feels like
very.
the Earth's coming to you very quickly.
Sure.
I guess sort of on that, what's your kind of either favorite or most challenging approach that you've done in the real world, or just which airports you like or don't like?
Ooh. I think the most coolest experience I think so far is as a captain sitting in the left-hand seat flying into Gibraltar, doing a landing in Gibraltar. It's an iconic place. The runway's tiny, tiny, and it's just such a cool, really sort of quirky place to to land. So that was pretty awesome. Salzburg is also pretty awesome. Gotta love a bit of Salzburg.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I still haven't flown to Salzburg.
Maybe not. I should give it a go. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I need
It's
to
good.
get
I think it might be on sale at the moment.
It's good scenery,
digital design, I want to say.
I'm going to check
I think
this
it's
out.
on. I think it's on Orbex, and they have a partner sale on at the moment. So
Ooh, I'm going to check that right
love digital design. I will buy any scenery they make. It's just amazing.
Absolutely.
They make great stuff.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome as well.
We've talked about your love of the FS Lab.
Oh no.
But Tollis are updating their A319 and A320. They're continuing on their A340, but they're adding engine out performance support, custom waypoints, bleed system upgrade, and they're also adding takeoff performance packs. So I know you fly XPlane as well, and
not a fan.
Why regrettably? Go on, I'm intrigued.
Well, do you know what? Do you know what? I would not have tried XPlane if it wasn't for streaming. I discovered a lot of people that watch me. Not a lot of people, but quite a few people who do watch me do use XPlane, and they were like, "Oh, you should give it a go. You should give it a go." And I'm like, "Oh." So I eventually sort of capitulated. I don't know, about 7-8 months ago, and I was like, "Fine, I'm installing it in anger." So I installed it, and bizarrely, I've kind of semi-fallen in love with it. Like it's quirky. There are a few features I don't like, but
my favourite feature is the engine cutout being the same as the flat footing in P3D.
Yes,
that I learned on a stream twice.
Well, I went through and changed all of my key commands in XPlane so that they were the same as P3D.
So I really
same in
regret
2020.
That.
Yeah. Big mistake to make.
It's hard. You've done thousands of hours on FS 2002, 2004, FSX, P3D, all the versions, built up all the muscle memory, all the key binds, all the kind of ways of navigating the menus, and then XPlane completely different story.
It took a bit getting used to, but we're getting there. I'm fairly comfortable with the sim now. I've had a lot of help from some people in the community who've been really awesome. Shout out to Jay as well, one of my moderators, who did a lovely job of getting me sorted up in XPlane in the beginning.
I should just take this opportunity to ask Tom, when's the XPlane stream happening?
Soon, let's say.
I don't know why Tom's really
I owe the world an
XPlane
stream because I made a bet that the FS Lab Sharklets would be out by now, but unfortunately that's not the case, as much as I wish it was. I'm sure you can't say. I'm sure you can't say anything about that, but soon, yeah, maybe when FS Labs release the chocolates, I'll do my XPlane stream.
Soon trademark.
Yeah, exactly. Soon.
We should make an emote, like a soon emote, basically.
Yeah.
You've got the emote slot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've flown the Tollis a little bit. Obviously, I don't imagine. Well, I guess if you liked it more than the Labs, you'd fly it more than the Labs. But what do you think of it, if you don't mind?
You've got to wait until we've got before. You're going to wait to see what we've got for Sam.
Will this be a one-word answer?
Yeah, it's depending. Well,
I guess it's different coming at it from a kind of real-world pilot than from someone who's just going from the default Airbus in, one of the older sims.
Well, truth be told, I actually have only had to go at it on someone else's computer. I haven't actually got it myself.
Yeah.
And I am reluctant to buy it because there is no need for me to buy it, because ultimately,
absolutely.
for me, streaming is about, when I'm so basically for me, like when I'm flying other airplanes in the sim, whether it be the A300 or the 737 or whatever, the CJ4, which is pretty cool in 2020, for example. I'm doing that for fun. I'm doing that, like not because I'm an expert, not because I'm a subject matter expert on those things. I'm doing it for a bit of fun, and because I'm I enjoy simming as well as kind of sharing like the Airbus knowledge and Airbus sort of kind of isms. But for me, the FS Labs is the best thing out there at the moment to do that. So there's no point for me using, the 320 Neo mod or the Tolus or the Flight Factor Airbuses, because they're all naff in comparison. No offense to them.
Yeah.
They all have their place, and it's great that people are developing stuff for the other sims. But for me, if I want to fly an Airbus, unfortunately, P3D is the place to be for the time being. So
I think even all the XPlane devs there, I know we had any builds on last week, and they were like, "It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to convert people from the A320."
Yeah.
Which is, and
I think it's one of the things that keeps people on P3D, PMDG, and FS Labs, and that's it.
Sure. And the Dash 8 is actually pretty awesome as well.
Yeah, yeah. I give the Dash 8 too much hate, but it's a really well simulated aircraft. It's just that no one knows. Well, no one being me knows how to fly it properly. So if you go into it with knowledge from an Airbus or a Boeing, then you're gonna make a lot of mistakes.
This podcast started off me and Tom flying in the Dash 8.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, we did a shared cockpit Dash 8 stream. I wish shared cockpit existed in more aircraft in P3D, because I think it's so much
shared
fun.
Cockpit when.
But obviously it's not an easy thing to do. But
well, actually, with the dual control, they've just implemented proper simulation of both control systems.
Yeah.
In the FS Labs.
I saw that.
Oh, if they could implement that.
Maybe.
Well, it's not easy.
I know nothing.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
So the key thing is as well, what we wanted to ask is, there's features in sims that at the FS Labs, there are things that you'll notice brand new every day, like you notice things in real aircraft. Where we're sort of wondering, when does it reach a point where you don't need to care about that? You've just got the model where it needs to be. So,
as in, like, what's the priorities for making it kind of as real as it gets, almost?
Yeah, because we hear study level a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, is it really worth them spending loads of time developing things that are accurate, but maybe no one is
my thing always goes back to the light that PMDG always points out that they've modelled, but nobody ever sees because they're always in the flight deck when they take off.
Yeah, well, exactly. So you could, like, as I said, the model is really important, because obviously, we love a nice little model on the outside and all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, it's the heart, it's the beating heart of the airplane, which is like the avionics, the electronics, the the indication systems, the alerting systems. It's the stuff which makes the airplane feel like it's real, and
that's what FS Labs do.
Yeah, exactly, like failures and stuff like that. And they're still adding to those. Some of them, if you've watched any of my streams or Katie's streams or other people's streams as well, I'm sure when they've tried doing failures, sometimes they don't go to plan, and they're always keen to fix them as well. So that's they do a good job of fixing any bugs that come about. But it's it's the foibles as well. Like for example, when you start up the Airbus, for example, you'll have TCAS. There'll be a TCAS fault, which is just part of when the airplane's starting up. That will obviously clear after a minute or a couple of minutes or so. But it's stuff like that. Actually, does it fly like the real thing? I don't think any of the other Airbuses in the sims actually fly that good or that well.
Yeah.
Well,
you can definitely feel the difference between, because I've flown a few of them. I can feel the difference between them. I've never flown the real Airbus, so I don't know which one's
one of them.
best.
Which
I'm kind of just taking your word for it.
One of them that has just been updated in last week is the fly-by-wire A320.
Wow.
And they've implemented a new custom fly-by-wire and autopilot system. Now, I don't think Sam's actually had a chance to fly it yet. But what was your thoughts on the fly-by-wire from your previous experience?
Anyone that knows me knows that I'm open-minded, and I'm always keeping an eye out on what they're getting up to. I do frequently update it and give it a go. But from my last fly of it, it was still consigned to the hangar. That's all I'll say. It's still a work in progress, and there's a lot of work. You're not going to build an Airbus overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day, as they say. Very complex.
The rate of progress is certainly very good, I'd say.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and they've got lots of people working on different areas, haven't they? So that's
I think on that as well. Like,
give it time.
It's certainly not like easy to develop these things, but it's easy to. It's the first half is always going to be easier than the second half. Like, you can get halfway, but getting the little things will.
But for me, just trying to do a normal day out with some other bits and pieces, maybe like trying to do single engine taxi and trying to simulate maybe some of the other sort of like abnormal conditions. I think they, if I remember rightly, I think they've only just allowed people to, they've only just sort of implemented flap 3 like for landing, if I remember rightly. Like, up until that point, you could only do a flap 4 landing, which was like, oh, that's good. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of flap 3 landings, but do you know what I mean? It's certainly a normal way to operate the airplane. So
this is something I can't remember. But what is the reason we do flap 3 in the Airbus over flap 4? Just random question.
It's a good question. It just depends. So flap 3 generally is fuel saving. So a lot of low cost airlines will encourage people to do them for that reason. However, if you would like if you've got a really long runway and the exit's kind of more towards the end, actually you might want a slightly longer run, providing it's still safe and stuff like that, within margins and stuff. I probably wouldn't do a flap 3 landing on anything shorter, give or take any other conditions. I wouldn't do any on a runway shorter than 2,500 meters. So
sure,
or just under 9,000 feet maybe. But if you've got a nice big long runway and the conditions are right, there's no reason why you can't do it. So that's why.
On the fly-by-wire, they have implemented the custom fly-by-wire system. They've implemented their custom engine model. They released a really cool video on their channel about that, actually.
And they made a video about how it was really accurate to the real world numbers, but
Bill talked about this with us last week about whether it matches the numbers.
Well, it's difficult because if they've got the manual, they can match it to the numbers. But if you've not flown the thing, it's going to be hard to know the feeling of flying the aircraft, unless you've got thousands of hours in the real thing or level D or whatever. So,
I remember.
I can't speak for real-world pilots, of course.
Well, I think just the one big thing for me, actually, which was really horrific, was the navigation. Like just trying to fly a route in it and trying to change the route. It was just so terrible. I mean, this was obviously a few weeks back, so obviously they might have fixed that and tweaked it a little bit. And as I said, I'm always keen to try it when the new models come out. Always keen to give it a go and see what's improved, what's changed. So like I said, at the moment, I don't want to be like this Mr. Negative and Mr. Mr. Down. I don't want to be discouraging because, it's amazing.
It's better than the default, I guess.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, it's great. You've got this team of people who are actually managing to work together and not fight. And actually, apparently one of the big things is we've got 80 real world pilots. I'm like, that's great, but I don't think you need 80 real world pilots, to be honest. You probably need about 5 or 10. You don't quite need 80 people. That's not gonna, just because you've got lots